Welcome to Truth Uncompromised. I am your host, Rhonda. Join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Truth is peace. Truth is justice and freedom to love, live, and be. Music provided by sourcevibrations.com. All right, family. Welcome to the Truth Uncompromised show. I am your host, Rhonda, and tonight is August 9th. We have a great show planned for you tonight. Tonight's topic is the ancient wars of Earth. So we will focus on specifically the civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria. Why was there a war waged? Who were those people then? Who are those people today? And how it all applies to us today. So with that said, I am going to bring on my co-host, Brother Sean. I don't see Sis yet, so I will bring on Brother Sean. Just a second here. Peace and love, brother. How are you?
Wholeness and power, sis. I'm well. How about you?
I'm well. Good to hear your voice.
Likewise. You ready to join the Space Patrol?
What Space Patrol?
Trump trying to put together a Space Patrol.
Oh, space. I got an article on that, too. Because you know it was breaking news. I was like, oh, really? So, yeah, I have an article that we're going to go into that tonight about his space force. It kind of tripped me out. So yeah, we're gonna go over there in just a second. But before I forget, you're gonna crack up, Brother Sean. Remember last week when we were in discussion and you said, won't he do it? I didn't know what you was talking about. Then I had to catch up to get where you was going with that. So I was talking to my sis this week, and she said that her and a friend of hers would make that statement all the time in the content that you made it being sarcastic. And so she said that when they heard us say that, they just fell out laughing. And I told her, I said, yeah, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And she said, yeah, because when you was like, who the hell is he? So right. You had some people rolling because that's a phrase that they use with that, won't he do it? So I just kind of chuckled, and I think I'm going to have to add that one to my list of phrases as well. So I just want to share that with you that, some folks got quite a bit laugh off of that. So,
what's up.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get into this space war situation. Okay. Now I got this off of the Washington Post, but they had a little news conference about it and everything. So this was today. Pence, Vice President Pence is the one, I guess, that announced. So Pence detailed plan for creation of Space Force and what will be the sixth branch of the military. Okay. Vice President Pence laid out an ambitious plan Thursday that would begin creating a military command dedicated to space and establish a space force as sixth branch of the U.S. military as soon as 2020. First since the Air Force was formed shortly after World War II. Pence warned of the advancements that potential adversaries were making and issued what amounted to a call to arms to preserve the military's dominance in space. Just as we've done in ages past, the United States will meet the emerging threats of this new battlefield, he said in a speech at the Pentagon. The time has come to establish the United States Space Force. But the monumental task of standing up a new military department, which would require approval by a Congress that shelved the idea last year, may require a significant new spending and a reorganization of the largest bureaucracy in the world. And the idea has already run into fierce opposition inside and out of the Pentagon, particularly from the Air Force, which could lose some of its responsibilities. Defense Secretary Jim Mathis last year said he opposed a new Department of Military at a time when we are focused on reducing overhead and integrating joint war fighting functions. This week, Mathis said the Pentagon and White House are in complete alignment on the need to view space as a war-fighting domain. But he stopped short of endorsing a full-fledged Space Force. In a briefing with reporters after Pence's speech, Deputy Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan suggested that Mattis' comments opposing the Space Force were made at a different time before the Pentagon received a bolstering budget. White House officials have been working with national security leaders to aggressively move ahead without Congress. The first step is creating a new U.S. Space Command by the end of the year, which will be led by a four-star general, the way the Pentagon Indo-Pacific Command oversees those regions. The new command will pull space experts from across the armed services, and there will be a separate acquisitions office dedicated to buying satellites and developing new technology to help the military win wars in space. After the announcement Thursday, President Trump tweeted, "Space Force all the way." For months, Trump has been calling for a Space Force, a new freestanding military department with its own chain of command and uniforms. In a letter to supporters Thursday, Trump campaign said it will sell a new line of gear that could come with a logo of their choosing, including one labeled Mars Awaits, to commemorate President Trump's new Space Force. According to a copy of the email, a move that fueled criticism that the effort was motivated by politics. The White House intends to work with lawmakers in submitting legislation by early next year. A senior administrative official said, with the hopes of setting up the first new military department since the Air Force in 1947. Some members of Congress and military leaders have been warning space is no longer a peaceful sanctuary, but a domain of conflict that needs more attention and resources. Space is vital to the way the United States wages war. The Pentagon satellites are used for missile defense warnings, guiding precision missions, and providing communications and reconnaissance. Russia and China have made significant advances challenging the U.S. assets in space. In 2007, China blew up a dead weather satellite with the missile, creating a massive debris cloud in orbit, which Pence called a highly provocative demonstration of China's growing capabilities to militarize space. China has also demonstrated the ability to hit satellites in much deeper orbit, where the military parks some of its most sensitive assets. Speech Pence acknowledged the difficulties in establishing a new service and said the Pentagon will create an assistant secretary of defense for space, a new top-level civilian position reporting to the Secretary of Defense, oversees an expansion of the sixth branch of service. The official must out many details, including how the Pentagon will recruit space forces and compete with resources within the Pentagon. Even basic details such as what uniforms Space Force will wear and what rank structure it will use must be decided. Some members of Congress advocated for creating a Space Corps inside the Air Force Department, similar fashion to how the Marine Corps is a part of the Navy Department. Elevating the proposal to create a new department will create additional Pentagon bureaucracy, critics say. Deborah James, who served as Air Force Secretary in the Obama administration, said Trump's decision to create a full new department is a solution in search of a problem. Prior to Trump's announcement in June, he wanted a Space Force, and Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson had cautioned against creating new Pentagon bureaucracy to address issues. James says she believes they're now stuck because the president announced this by surprise. Efforts to reach several senior Air Force officials were not successful Thursday. Wilson was traveling on business and not in the Pentagon when Pence made his announcement. General David L. Goldstein, Air Force top official, and General Stephen Wilson, vice chief, sat quietly in the Pentagon auditorium as Pence spoke. Air Force General Paul Selva, the Pentagon's vice chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, said in a briefing reporter that the Pentagon is very much in favor of establishing a space command as a way to speed up efforts in space. But when it comes to establishing a new branch of military, Selva said there's an obligation to present a set of options that can be presented to Congress. He said that in bed of the president. The White House has pushed for Congress to invest an additional $8 billion in national security space systems in the next 5 years. The new command and reorganization should be budget neutral. Scott Pace, the executive secretary of National Space Council, said in an interview. However, going forward, there probably will need to be an increase in resources to buy improved capabilities and more war fighters at the Space Force as the Space Force matures. After Pence's speech, Republican Mike Rogers of Alabama and Jim Cooper, Democrat of Tennessee, members of the House Armed Service Committee, praised the move, saying a Space Force will result in a safer, stronger America. We have been warning for years of the need to protect our space assets and to develop more capable space systems, they said in a joint statement. In his speech, Pence urged the audience to support the administration's effort to create the new department. Speaking to a room made up of mostly of the U.S. troops in U.S. troop in uniform, Pence, their commander-in-chief, is going to continue to work tirelessly towards this goal, and we expect you all to do the same. The only thing we can't afford is inaction, he said. And that was from the Washington Post today. So I'll pause. So, Brother Sean, what's your take on it? I'll let you go, and then I'll get my little 1 cent.
Where they gonna train at? I mean, first of all, we know they can't get out there, but I guess they're trained in the water like NASA do.
Right. And the multi-million-dollar pools, swimming pools.
Yeah.
Right.
Just play around, make some movies, you know. I mean.
Right. You know, it was interesting that because Trump card has been hinting about a space program, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. But for them to want to make it a separate branch of the military, here's what I feel that's going on. And now, you know, put it in a physical perspective and then tie it to the spiritual. From a physical perspective, they're fleecing the public like they normally motherfucking do. Because the whole never a straight answer NASA budget is just ridiculous. Talking about they didn't went to space, they didn't went to the moon, they didn't did this, they didn't went to the moon, but can't remember how they got to the moon now, and they lost the documentation on how to get there. Now these are the excuses that they're giving the public. I'm not making this shit up. Then what's the one dude that left that supposedly went to the moon, and every time he's in an interview, he is rolling his eyes like he don't want to be bothered. I forget his little name.
Armstrong, was it?
Is he? Okay, it must be him. Or was it
Neil
Buzz?
Armstrong.
Whichever one is still
Buzz,
alive. Yeah, Buzz, the one that's still alive.
Buzz Aldrin.
You know. Yeah, Aldrich. There you go. Okay, so now when he's public and they try to give him awards, he's standing there like this is such bullshit, like he's embarrassed, he's rolling his eyes. And then a video just surfaced recently with this baby in an elementary school that he was visiting, asking why y'all haven't been back to space. And he was caught off guard that this baby would bring up such a intelligent question, although it's basic. It's a damn shame to show you how the babies have more goddamn sense than the general American public. So he was caught off guard and he kind of stumbled a little bit and he said, well, that's a good question. And I don't know if they edited the video, in his defense. I don't know if the video was edited, but it was said in the video, he said that's because we never went. Okay, so now I don't know if that part was edited. But the point being, NASA ain't done shit but fleece the public of all of these billions of dollars. They've been busted several times with supposedly, even as they're claiming that they in motherfucking orbit on the, what you call that, space thing, that all of the countries are supposedly and allegedly working together on.
Space Station.
Yeah, the ISS, the International Space Station. They've been busted so many times as they claim they in orbit with the little wires on their back as they're supposedly floating. Other times when they're supposedly out working on it, you see little bubbles from out of their spacesuit, which shows you that they're clearly underwater. Okay, so you can see many, many videos where NASA is totally faking the whole thing. Okay, and the moon stuff itself, you could pretty much break that down as a Hollywood production at the end of the day. So this new space program, and it's not even space program because now they're militarizing it, branch of military government, is yet another ploy to fleece fiat budget. But on the flip side, I think that they are fleecing that money for other purposes. And I believe, now this just my humble, lowly opinion, they ain't going out of space. We already know that, because they can't get out. It's been proven time and time again that there is a barrier that blocks it. So they can't go up. But I believe it's to go out past that Arctic wall. So I believe they're in the process of making preparations to start truly colonizing those other lands beyond the poles. And that's why they keep talking all this business about Mars. So just in reading that article, I kind of chuckled where Trump card says something about the logo of this new branch, this military branch, this space branch, military branch. He wanted something like a Mars logo. I find that fucking hilarious because to me that is code when they talk about Mars and inhabiting Mars beyond those poles. So they are setting up this military branch to divert the funds to fully implement the idea of colonizing outside. And damn, I can't think of that particular movie. And somebody, if y'all can remember what I'm talking about, let me know. It was a movie out, and all of a sudden it went away. I can't remember if it was a Netflix reoccurring series or if it was on regular television, where they had these group of people that was supposedly going out of space, and they were on this spaceship for so many years. And so, long story short, as you got into many, many episodes, they had faked that they were out of space. And some people had broke away because they had even went so far as to start exterminating people because they were running out of supplies. So some people had broke out and found out they hadn't gone no goddamn where. They was sitting somewhere in the desert. So where I'm going with this is what they're going to do upon the public is either fake an alien invasion or come up with an idea of we are going to colonize new lands, and we're going to colonize new lands in outer space on Mars, and we're going to have a group of volunteers that go and set up this colony for X amount of years, and to start gradually getting the public in their psyche that, hey, this is good to go to do. So they're literally going to have motherfuckers getting in a spaceship, thinking they taking off and all of this, when in fact all they're doing is going to be going across that Arctic wall. Okay, so that's what I think that they're doing. And to me, their plan is all of this talk on AI and all of that, they are going to take that technology with them to that outer realm, to Mars. And believe it or not, this actually ties into our topic tonight on Lemuria in Atlantis. So I'll pause, Brother Sean, if you want to put something else on it. Yeah, go ahead on, brother.
I honestly don't believe that they have the power to be able to colonize anything beyond here. That's where they need us to continue to bow into this. They have no power. I mean, they rule here is up. So how they think they're going to go someplace else and rule? I just think there's another distraction. You know,
and that very well could be too.
Because the younger generation is off into all of this about space and whatnot. There are no planets out there for real. I mean,
not up.
What is all this leading up to? Exactly. And as far as for going outward, I don't. They're too melanin deficient to make it through those portals. They're not vibrating at the right frequency, and they definitely can't take none of this technology there.
Now, that's an interesting take because I think that as the portals are opening, there's going to be a split based on people's frequency. And because the frequency is definitely rising where we are. I don't know what's going on with those other outer realms. I can only, of course, speak to what we are here. And because we are closer to the center, which is that aurora borealis, or if you want to say the heart of Mama Earth, we are the vibration will be higher here. So that's why I feel as those portals open that they're going to move outwards, those with the lower vibration, because they can't handle this frequency. They already going crazy. So it's going to be one or two things. Either they ass is going to go outwards with the fuckery, or they'll just perish altogether because they won't be able to hold the vibration here. But I believe we're going to soon find out. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brother Sean.
I think there's no choice but for them to eventually perish. As it says, as in the beginning, it shall be in the end. They weren't in the beginning, so they can't be in the end.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Brother Kale texted me. He said Mars might be another big continent past Antarctica. Yes, and that's where I was trying to go with it, Brother Kelly. That yeah, and I know you know that, but he put it in such simplistic terms, and thank you for that. So yes, they're talking about the planets being up when really those planets represent energy centers, but they're like on the outer layers past Antarctica. So each one of those planets, what they're calling planets, are really energy centers, is like the next outer layer of Mama Earth. So, for example, past that Arctic wall, Mars would be the next in line, and then on back. So yeah, so it's going to be really, really interesting. Now, some say that as we were ancient, that a lot of those territories, because really that's what they are. That's why they call it ET. They have, programmed the public to think extraterrestrial. It's really extra territory, people. That's really what it means. ET is really extra territory. So meaning extra territory outside of this known territory. So what will be interesting, and I think we're going to very, very soon find out, is how those other outer layers was it always one big one? So some say that as the vibration gets higher and higher, that the folks are not going to be able to handle it. So they keep moving out to those outer layers until eventually, when the entire plane per se is at a high vibrational state, then that's when all of those particular entities or beings will have to leave. Or it could be just like Brother Sean say, they're going to perish right in our little realm. So just that was right on time about the space program stuff, forming a new military government. They're up to something, and it damn show ain't what they telling you it is. So it's either a distraction, not either. I know it's a distraction, but I feel there's other underlining things that they're trying to do as well. So, go ahead on, Brother Sean.
If you think about it, like what our bodies do when they get a tumor, is actually confining the foreign elements to one area. And with this area being on lockdown,
yes,
it's to keep them confined.
That's a very good point.
Because you see what they've done here.
The parasite.
Imagine if these parasites got outside of containment.
That is a very, very good point. Very good point. So it was to stop that disease from spreading out. Yeah, and see, that's why I was like, we're gonna soon find out that maybe it was all open when we had a high vibrational realm, and I'm equating the high vibrational realm when we had our ancient trees, when we had the Lemuria and Atlantis civilizations in play. So maybe it was all open then, because now they're slowly starting to admit and start paying attention to stories on Antarctica that it is warmer than they stinking asses are telling. There is greenery on the land, and they're starting to show some of the animals, other animals, their bones and all of that was there. So I'm saying all that to say that's a good point, Brother Sean. But something happened that iced off that portion of the land that created that ice ring to segregate this small portion. Because the territory that we do have in the grand scheme of things is pretty small. So that's a very, very, very good point, brother. A very good point. But we will soon see. I personally think by 2020, the ship finna straight up hit the fan. It's going to hit the fan. I think that the vibratory rate will be off the chain, and stuff is not going to have any choice but to reveal itself. They're not going to be able to hide it anymore, because they're barely hiding it now. I mean, they are barely hiding it. It's just that most folks are asleep. That's the only reason that they're getting away with it. But those of us that are awake, we see the changes in the landscape of the planet. We could tell when the vibratory rate changes, the atmosphere changes, etc. So I think at best it's only a couple of more years, okay? And that ties into the whole concept that I was talking about, I don't know, I think it was last week, about the universal basic income, the AI, all of that shit. All of that ties in, okay? Because it's trying to switch over to something new because of the change in the age in the vibratorial state. And the whole system of slavery and scarcity, it's already over. It is literally physically over. The only thing that is keeping it going is the consciousness of the masses. So very, very interesting point. Just real quick, just to kind of pick up to even more, there was an article. This came out this week. This is from Business Insider. One of the largest banks issued an alarming warning that Earth is running out of resources to sustain life. Okay, all tying into what we're talking about. The planet is running out of resources, HSBC warned in a new note. One of the world's largest banks says the planet is running out of resources and warns that neither governments nor companies are prepared for climate change. Okay, this whole climate change thing, let's talk about this just real quick. They know goddamn well that the climate change is the shift in the ages. Okay, the shift in the poles. Okay, kind of the some of the same stuff that went on during the Pangea, okay, that's happening today. And then some are saying now, when the Atlantis and Lemuria stuff jumped off as well, okay? So they full of shit on this climate change. Don't let them fool you into thinking it's one thing. It's more about the shift in the high vibrational energy, and Mama Earth is correcting herself. Okay, so the world spent its entire natural resource budget for the year by August 1st. A group of analysts at HSBC said in a note that cited research from Global Footprint Network. That means the world civilization used up all planet's resources for the year in just 7 months. Okay, so let's break this down with the fuckery. Mama Earth regenerates herself. You know, we don't have to make this shit complicated. You know, all you have to do is take a simple piece of fruit or a vegetable, you cut it open, there's many seeds in there, okay? So there is no such thing as scarcity, okay? So they bullshitting on that. They create scarcity, and you see them trying to do that by breeding fruits and vegetables without seeds, creating the concept of fiat monetary system where they build scarcity into it, okay? But anyhow, that means the world's citizens used up all the planet's resources for the year in just 7 months, according to GFN's analysts. In our opinion, these findings and events, so now I say motherfucking opinion, but anyway, these findings and events show that many businesses and governments are not adequately prepared for climate impacts, nor are they using natural resources efficiently, the HSBC analyst said in a note. Many banks and asset managers have started factoring climate risk into their decision making, a move spurred in part by former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, but it's far less common to see multinational banks sound the alarm about climate change so explicitly in their equity research. Okay, so pay attention. Now they tying in the quote climate into banking. So pay attention of the conditioning of the mind that they're using. To calculate Earth's natural resource budget, GFN considers the demand for natural resources, which includes food, forests, and marine products, as well as humans' effect on the environment for factors like carbon emission. The combined total is designed to give a comprehensive picture of humanity's global footprint. Earth's overshoot day, the point in a year at which we use up a year's worth of resources, has been steadily moving forward in the time since GFN first started tracking it. In 1970, we overshot Earth's resource budget by 2 days. Overshot day fell on December 29th, according to HSBC. That date has been pushed by almost 5 months since then. HSBC note also warned about extreme events resulting from heat, including the wildfires in Scandinavia and broken temperature records around the world. Okay, so bingo, they could have deleted all this other shit and just got down to the nitty gritty. The planet is heating up, bottom line. And she's going to continue to heat up to correct herself because it's a cleansing time. Okay, so all that other shit they talking, that's really what we getting down to. So As scientists work on attribution and analysis for specific events, the general consensus is that climate change is making these events more likely to occur, more severe, HSBC said. The predicted effects of climate change are starting to become real. Wildfires have torn through California in recent years, and they're part of a worsening trend related to rising global temperatures. Other consequences include increased frequency of hurricanes and flooding, melting ice sheets, and greater number of heat waves. Recent studies have shown that global temperatures by the year 2100 could be up to 15% higher than the highest projection from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. According to HSBC, extreme events have severe economic and social costs. In our view, adaptation will move further up the agenda with a growing focus on social consequences, the analysis said. Okay, so again, that was from the Business Insider science section, and they put that article out on August 7th. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with the family to show you how they are beginning the programming of the public psyche to now blame all of these events on climate changing, which really is the shift in the Earth's magnetic poles as we are in a different age, which is bringing about a high vibrational frequency. And a lot of correction has to take place for that to happen. So a lot of places are going to be destroyed because as we get into tonight's topic, you're going to also learn that the landscape that we see today was based on a lot of the ancient wars and recent wars up to date. So all of that has to be corrected back, or whatever way that Mama Earth chooses it to be. Okay, so now they don't want to fucking talk about that. Okay, because as the vibrational rate rises up, increases, folks are not going to be able to handle the frequency. Hell, they ain't handling it too well now. Okay, so that's really what this is about. So they're trying to prepare the public for these drastic changes that you're going to start seeing on the planet in the form of the weather, and I believe that the space military thing also, they're going to use that to factor in as well. That's why I think they ass is going to fake an alien invasion. That's just my 2 cents. So, okay. All right. So if you want to put something on it, press *1 to get in the queue. So, we are going to go into tonight's main topic, which is the ancient wars of Earth, and we're going to focus on specifically Atlantis and Lemuria. And this is off of a site called AtlantisHistory.info. And this is pretty extensive. So I'm gonna scroll down to when they talk about the shifting gravity magnetics and the many polar shifts. Let me make sure, is that where I'm supposed to start? Because this article is pretty extensive, so I would encourage folks to read through it. Whoever put this together put a lot of great information into it. Okay, synchronization news points of the compass and the poles of the Earth. Explanation of the differences between past and present. Our 4 directions of the compass of north, east, west, and south have not always described geophysical references as we know them now. Earth's poles have shifted several times since 650,000 BC, and Earth's rotation has been offset or completely turned over around at least a few times during the same time span. For the sake of simplicity here, all geophysical directional references of our collective past will be described in today's direction of the compass. The north and south of Atlantis, as described in the next pages, would not have been called north and south by the Atlanteans in those time periods as the world's north-south equator, and planetary rotations were different than present day. Okay, so let me go back down to that. Okay, Atlantis, Earth's history, Lemuria, her story, and Earth, our story. I like how people use that, her story. Okay, so they're saying 6 million BC to 4.5 million BC, and it could be trillions. Okay, anyhow. Right. Early Terra from Mars.history.info. Okay, I guess that's where they got this information. From out of unmanifest a spark comes forth, that which ignites what will become this universe. The ignition process, in a sense, contained an error, the light of consciousness, and the shadow of which has not been endowed with the same consciousness. The cosmic shadows were and are envious of the consciousness that comes with the spark, and heaven and hell have been warring ever since. Okay, so to just break that down in plain folks' language, what they are suggesting is that before you can envision this physical density that we are currently experiencing, there was just, and there is still is, but just pure consciousness or pure energy. So what this particular person is saying, that there was conflict within the pure energy state, and with the ability from that consciousness to even spark these physical realms. Okay, so that's where they're going with that. And so there was a war even in that pure energy state among the consciousness. So in other words, if there is a collective consciousness of energy, part of that collective consciousness broke off and was in conflict with the other part of the collective consciousness. Okay, so this is that was before the physical is what they're describing. In the beginning, first came the separation of the yang, arise out of the yin through sonic pressurization, precipitation out the first physical element, hydrogen, divine desire. Okay, so when he talks about that yin and yang, you should enter and understand that's what they're saying, the balance. Okay, that's always what yin and yang means, balance. The second piece of that, through sonic pressurization. Sonic is sound, okay, because everything ties back to numbers, which ties to sound. Okay. The desire for creation, Brahma, led to fusion, which began to build the other lighter elements. The yang element, hydrogen, combined with consciousness, oxygen, and thus hydrogen generated water, came into physical existence. All these lighter elements in turn were processed through millennial of early supernova, which generated heavier elements. In turn, more cosmic processes such as exotic supernova pulsars, white dwarfs, neutron star and black holes, to name a few, briefly generated the more exotic and high-end elements up to element 144. Okay, so just to break that down in plain folk language, all they are saying is that consciousness, through the consciousness thought, they produce the sound. So think about it. Your thoughts, your consciousness comes first before you emit sound. And from that sound, the creation was spun. Okay, and then he's just breaking down, he or she is just breaking down the science behind physical creation. So how oxygen was created, how water was created to spark the physical creation. But the sound was the emission of what they're calling the sonic booms, or what modern science calls the Big Bang, okay? So all of that stuff about the Big Bang and space and all of that, there is no space. It's all energy, okay? Even what we see today in the sky, the dome, that's all energy. Okay, so here we go. Okay, and then he just goes on to talk about that 144 elements were generated in this creation. Terra, prior to 4.5, I think that's billion BC, was a hot, rocky, drier, and larger planet with a methane, argon atmosphere which supported non-carbon, silicon-based life. Terra was then in a closer orbit around the sun. Now, I don't believe that part, because we don't go around the sun, but whatever, in between where Venus and Mars are now located. Okay, so just to put this in perspective to what we have been talking about, now if you still believe in the outer space concept, knock yourself out. That applies. But if you believe in not the outer space, but the extra territory, so moving beyond the Arctic, so what they are saying in this particular thing is that it started on the outer layers, okay, and it was silicon based, okay. So as we get into this tonight, we are going to talk about, we find silicon in our realm, okay. That's when we speak of those ancient giant trees, and they are still on our territory today, territory / planet / Mama Earth, and they are tested as silicon. Okay. All right. So Terra was moonless, as were all the planets in our solar system. Intelligent life came to be, and on certain planets in this solar system, civilization flourished. So then they're going into that Jupiter had the first intelligent life. I'm trying to jump to what I need. Okay, so trying to jump. This is so much, y'all. I'm trying to jump to the juicy parts. Okay, so I'm not going to go over this. You can certainly read it. They're just going on into how everything was pretty much created. Okay, and they're going into Adam and Eve. Okay, where's that? I got to jump to my Lemuria. Okay. Sorry. Had to go to the next page. Okay, Lemuria. So now we're getting into 6 million BC. So the other one had to be billion, y'all. My bad. So this is 6 million BC. This is, according to them, to 52 BC, 52,000 and some change BC. The first and second worlds of Earth. So they're saying 7 lands, continents, size land masses, and there were 7 seas to go with them. Okay, Lemuria, the megacontinent, first civilization of native-born Earth humans of giant form, the inspiration and big brother, big sister to the earliest Atlanteans. Okay. Okay, so Lemuria, called the first continent, Pangea, Gondwana land. I find that interesting, huh? Wakanda, Wanana, but anyway, and Mu and other names. This megacontinent was the largest landmass to emerge after the initial gatherings of waters following the chunk of the Atlantean that collided with Earth and became our moon. Okay, so that's all a part of the whole early creation story that you can go back and read on your own. So, and Terra Papers also has this information, and a lot of other publications. Okay, they do a little bit of twist on it. You can certainly read that on your own, or go to YouTube and take it for what it's worth. Okay. Okay, and they also given a reference here on marshistory.info if you want more information on that. Okay, so for millennia, this was a geologically stable landmass. It was the first continent populated by what came to be known as human beings, which then had a much larger structure. Okay, the geographic of where Lemuria is located. Lemuria, as it existed then, was almost a mirror reversal of the Pacific Ocean below the 37th parallel, with a west coast stretching between Japan and Australia, and its eastern coast stretching between North and South American continents. After the churning and long settlement of Earth following the collision of what would become the moon, Lemuria for a long time was as a land of seamlessly endless hills and plains, and much of what we call jungle, although the plant life was different then. Even though there wasn't much rain as we know it, there were plentiful lakes, streams, and rivers due to the superabundance of springs and the almost oozing thick morning dew in some areas. The eastern shore. Lemuria's northeastern shore started at the present-day coast of Oregon and included California's coastline, as well as parts of Baja California coast. A chain of islands stretching north and south then existed 80 to 100 miles east of this Lemurian coastline, which later became the Sierra Nevada mountains. Lemuria's large eastern coast then extended south. Most of South America's west coast was then part of Lemuria's east coast. The southern shore, at what is now the southwest coast of South America, Lemuria's coastline diverged to the west. Lemuria's southern coast then stretched across what is now Pacific Ocean to the southeast coast of Australia. The Easter and Galapagos Islands, were a part of Lemuria. Now that I didn't know. The unique animal life of the Galapagos, just like the unique redwood trees in California, are remnant population of that lush land. And that makes sense with those redwoods, since they are very, very tall trees, and those trees have also been tested and with traces of silicon in them as well. So that's pretty interesting. So I'll pause. Brother Sean, did you have something to put on it? I didn't want to be rambling if you
Yeah. I mean, the whole silicone thing, this makes me wonder. I mean,
Mhm.
because originally the breast implants were silicone. And then when they leaked, they were causing them to die.
Mhm.
And they went to the saline solution. So I really don't think that it's a coincidence that they started using silicone in that. And I just
For
think
the
about the whole Silicon Valley and
uh-huh.
how the
Mhm.
technology and everything is coming out of Silicon Valley.
Silicone. Mhm. 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 It's interesting that you say that because one time, a couple of weeks ago, Sis Lioness had came on and broke down how that whole silicone, that what they're calling silicone today, because matter of fact, all of these booty shots, which just crack me up. I mean, sisters that gotta go get they get some shots in the ass to get more ass. That just still cracks me up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It cracks me up. But anyhow, um, they're using that to get more butt, to get bigger hips, and it really started with the transgender community, okay, or men wanting to be women. That's how those whole injections in the ass and the hips started, okay, because they can't get that form. But now, Brother Sean, that's now they running to go get that shit out of the body because it's literally tearing up their body. But anyhow, what I'm getting back to, this lioness said that they took the whole silicon, what we're seeing now with silicon, it is a derivative off of the natural ancient silicon. And just recently, I saw a Facebook post where someone showed part of a silicon tree. Um, it was like a piece of it, and within that piece, oh my God, it was stunning. It was like a log of wood. Let me be more specific. A log of wood cut where you could see both ends of the wood, and it was all filled with crystals. It was amethyst in there. It looked like all of the crystals in the rainbow. And that ties back to, if you think about that movie Avatar, where they had the ancient giant trees that represent them silicon trees family. And when they were walking on the ground and it was lighting up, that was remnants of the tree's root system, which included those crystals. Okay, so with Silicon Valley, they are replicating technology. Okay, so the whole idea that the silicon is the conductor of the entire motherboard per se. Okay, that is a knockoff. Now I don't know specifically, and that's maybe something I can research and maybe have for next week for the family, what that actual silicon stuff that they use and to put up in people's body is made of. But I do know from the Silicon Valley perspective, that's what it originally meant, that the silicon is the conductor of all of the technology. Now, I've been in tech for many years, over 20 years, so I didn't know how to connect it until I got into consciousness and I said, oh shit, the entire technology world is built on the metaphysics consciousness world. Okay, so once again, that's still trying to imitate what nature is actually able to do naturally. But very, very good point, Brother Sean. Okay. So what am I saying? Did we do the Western Shores? No, I didn't do the Western Shore. Okay, so we're still on Lemuria. The Western Shore at the northeast coast of Australia, the coastline of Lemuria headed north and a little east to include part of the Philippines along the Isthmus, then extended northwest into a part what is now parts of Japan. Then the land headed east to the coastal Oregon. Hawaii was also part of Lemuria. Okay, and see, I didn't know that it went that far. I always thought of it as like Hawaii and California. Anyway, the Western Shores. At the northeast coast of Australia, the coastline of Lemuria headed north and a little east to include parts of I just read that. The northern shore. The northern shore roughly followed what is today the 37th north parallel with two more northerly extensions. The first northern larger peninsula extension was in the vicinity of what is now Japan, and the second northern peninsula was in the vicinity of what is now North America. 72,000 BC, modern geology. After a millennia of stability, the Lemuria of 72,000 BC became geologically active. Many volcanoes, earth fault lines, hot springs, mud volcano, gas geysers, and other thermal features were spread throughout this largest landmass. All these features enriched the grounds, which was already full of minerals, metallics, and beautiful crystalline deposits. Lemuria was known for the fertility of the earth. Huge green forests and jungle existed in most areas. The megaflora, okay, and that flora 2 family, you saw that a lot in that Avatar movie. But anyhow, the megaflora in turn supported numerous Lemurian population of megafauna. These large animals and dinosaurs, also numerous in many parts of the earth, caused real problems for the people of Mu. The original philosophy of the Lemurians was non-interference with all life forms. While this is noble, this became an aspect of one of the fallibilities that of the later Lemurians had, the inability to change. The original people of Lemuria were giants with a minimum stature of around 9 meters or 28 feet tall. Some of this land was much taller than that, and no one in this time period had a short stature of today's 2-meter tall humans. For the most part, Lemuria did not live in cities such as exist today, but rather gatherings or nodal areas where enhanced gravity magnetic existed, as well as emanation of certain crystalline deposits. In these areas, pyramids and other geometric amplifying structures were built, some with living in simple dwellings nearby, as well as caves. The atmosphere, manifold, and Lemurian weather. Due to the different atmospheric pressure with different atmospheric gases and gas ratio then existing as part of the atmospheric manifold, the sky was not blue, but on non-cloudy days. The sky was a yellow-orange, sometimes shading to a deeper green color with sunrises and sunsets. Some areas of Lemuria had more of these sky color variations, and these areas became places of interest and recreation. Violent weather, such as we now know now, was unheard of then. Droughts and dryness were known, but deserts, as exist now, did not exist then. Sometimes rain itself was rare, but the megaflora megafauna and other life, including the giant humans, got most of their water from the mist and dews of time, which collected in most places every early morning. And this earlier atmosphere of Earth, the collection of these dews on the giant vegetation, then dripping down into furrows in the earth, was of enough volume to collect into pools, which fed streamlets, which in turn which became brooks and rivers, which in turn fed the shallower, less salty seas of this area. Okay, the rare areas of true rain become places of recreation and rest. In areas of increased geologic activity, the stream from the volcano mud, volcano geysers, and other thermal features would sometimes cloud up locally, resulting in local rain showers. These places of increased local rain became areas of recreation due to rarities of the continent and most of Earth at this time. Even though later Lemuria had plenty of volcanoes, most were on a slow eruption cycle, which allowed a steady building of the volcano and Earth, but not erupting so much with violent and destruction. When volcanoes did very rarely erupt more violently, there would an unknown occurrence of lightning, thunder as we know it now. Increased local rain was a result. Okay, let me see here. All right, so, and they also provide little pictures and stuff in this little drawing up markings. Okay, pre-flood forests and vegetation with Earth's functioning atmosphere manifolds. The above reconstruction of what was from the continent of Gobi, Cathay, the Solar Dynasty, where Mongolia, China, and the southeast rivers are. Okay. All right, so it just shows these huge trees in this orange sky. The other two original contents of this modern Earth, the blue and the green lands, in the beginning stages of planning for human life on Earth, 7 different main forms resulting in unique colors were originally agreed upon with creative intelligence. All would have unique characteristics and were to help each other. Along with the 5 agreed upon lands and peoples, there were 2 continental-sized lands, large island continents such as Australia is today. They were known as the blue and the green lands. Okay, excuse me. The blue continent. The blue continent was a landmass which existed in what is now known as the Southern Indian Ocean. Okay, and they're saying about between Australia, India, and Africa. A beginning of the 6th race of blue humans was going to populate here, but after a few came to exist, the rest of the population here did not come to pass. Okay, so I found that interesting. What was the color of the folks up? Oh, shoot, Brother Sean is set up and got booted. Okay, brother, let me respond to him right quick. Poor thing. Starting up with the crap earlier. Let me see if he can get back on. Okay. Okay, if not, I'll dial him in. So just bear with me, family. I have to dial him in if he can't get in. Let me see. There he is. All right, brother, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, sis.
Okay. I just so happened to look over. I'm like, oh, there he goes. You didn't got dropped off early. So
yeah, they at me early.
I know. And I had got all excited because they I don't know when you dropped off, but they
the
started
blue
talking.
People.
Yeah, okay. So now, what that make you think of?
Avatar.
And you know, it's interesting because when that movie first came out, I said to myself, I know damn well they didn't sit up and create this on their motherfucking own. It's too beautiful. It's too specific. That takes a higher level of consciousness to do that. So I'm like, I know they didn't got this from something. Okay. So yeah. So reminds me of Avatar when they talk about the blue continent. All right. The green continent. The original green island, here we go, y'all. The original green island was located in what is now Antarctica. These lands were considered for eventual human habitation. Two different color giant-sized humans were to be evolved to these lands. Blue for the blue land and green for the green land. These additional human family members never came about in large numbers. They were not the effort to significantly develop the blue and the green races, although very small numbers of these did show up later on in time, even in this present. Okay, and then they're saying the missing humans of blue and green. I don't know what they mean by that TBA. Oh, to be assigned, I guess. Whatever. Okay, historical high sciences. The first sciences of ancient Lemuria and Atlantis. Whilst the Atlanteans appeared on the world stage first, it was Lemurians who constructed the first human civilization. The first civilization was based on spiritual principles and promoted inner development of the individual, then outer development. Lemuria, after building its initial technology and massive pyramidal constructs, never became a world power like the Atlanteans. They were happy to just live in harmony. The Lemurian debate of what harmony was would eventually lead to real trouble with their environment, starting with the non-physical science of mind intellect, consciousness, and inner disciplines. The Lemurians became proficient in the outer sciences of biology, botany, astronomy, and astrology, and the science that they really mastered and gave the rest of the world: masonry, stoneworks, pyramids, and large mathematic living and working constructs. The Lemurians at first have immunity to the lower yuga cycles. The Atlanteans of these earlier times were impressed with the Lemurian ability to avoid many of the effects of the cyclical yuga declines, including what became known as the Great Decline. During the Great Decline, the Atlanteans lost many of their first great scientific achievements, technology, and priceless knowledge, which came from the original kings Poseidon and families, including the giant Atlas. The partial Lemurian immunity to these outer events was based directly upon their focus and quest for inner knowledge and self-realization. These inner quests took long-term disciplines for over a period of 12,000 plus revolutions around the sun. This level of inner discipline for this length of time was something that most later Atlanteans and others weren't interested in. So the Atlanteans and others without inner discipline became affected by the periodic drift of the solar system. Okay, so Let me pause and get some water and then break that down. Okay, so basically, what they're saying is that the Lemurians were more about knowledge of self, going within, but they did introduce mathematics, astrology, etc., across the planet. But their focus was introducing things or shifting physical introduction over a longer period of time, and the Atlanteans they wanted things to happen a lot quicker, and so they were focused on doing things based on just our particular energy system cycle or solar systems, whereas the Lemurians were doing things on a universal cycle. Okay, so that's where you get the whole concept of the 26,000 year cycle, which is really expressing the universal cycle versus the solar cycle. Well, now it's 13 zodiacs, but they didn't bust it down to 12. Okay, so just giving you an insight of the difference between the two. The first mathematics, the first physics, the first mathematics and understanding of the building blocks of this creation came from Lemuria. The Lemurians were able to see the underlying harmony of the principles of creation. So they always sought in whatever their works to work with the flow of the universe. Okay, so it just explained what I was talking about earlier. While the later Atlanteans would far surpass the Lemurians in some physical science developments, the Atlanteans as a whole never developed the ability to perceive as the Lemurians had done. The first spoken and written language on Earth. Oh, poor Sean. Okay. Here, let's try. Are you still there, brother? Oh,
yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. That was the message from earlier. I got the message. It flashed across my screen that you had got kicked off, but that was from earlier. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were still on. Okay, the first spoken and written language of Earth. The Lemurians developed the first and highest original spoken language. Now this is a lie, but whatever. Sanskrit was not the first language, but okay. We're going to roll with it because they say it is. That is not the first language. It was a derivative of another language, but we'll just let that stand for this sake. This language was to be used especially in the lower Yuga cycles. Now this what effed me up, y'all. I'm finna straight up read this again. I'm gonna read it slow. And Sean, you gonna love this, because you've been saying this out the gate since I've known you. And by the way, next week's show is going to be on the etymology of language and words. But anyhow, this language was to be used especially in the lower Yuga cycles, when the natural telepathic abilities in human were muted or completely silenced. So I'm going to take a sip of water on that right there. See if Brother Sean want to put something on it. If not, I'm going to move on.
Take your sip of water, and we going to move on.
Because you've been screaming that for like ever. Okay.
Well, maybe they hear me now.
Well, that's what the folks are saying. So, I mean, you got another source saying what you've been saying. That fall, the spell of language, and that's what next week's show is going to be about. The spell of language is a lower level. Okay, So, the language shown to humans from angels, and I'm going to put that shit up in quotes, this goddamn angel stuff. But anyhow, the language shown to humans from angels was based on the geometries contained within the human spine, Jacob's ladder. So right there, language is confining you. If it is confining you based on Jacob's ladder, which is really, they're talking about, you can look at it in two ways, your chakra system, or Jacob's ladder from a physical perspective represents your spine. So down from the base of your spine all the way up to the top of your, I never pronounce it right, your Abdullah Magabla, whatever. I never pronounce it right.
Medulla oblongata.
Yes, back of your head, okay? So it's telling you that it is using the geometries from the base of the spine all the way up to the top. Okay, but that's still a limitation. Okay, first come the spoken word, and later during one of the lower Yuga cycles, the written was developed to preserve knowledge. Okay, but just notice that language was used during those lower cycles. All right. Music, sonics, photonics, gravimetrics, and consciousness. Along the above related sciences, the Lemurians were the first to develop the arts, especially the art sciences of music and sonic. They understood the original relationship of these processes in the universe. The first historians, the first astronomers. The Lemurians looked to the sky firstly within our solar system. What they found, reawakening memories within some of them. Seems familiar. What they found as they scanned the system was the remnants of war. A war that some of them in previous incarnation as different beings in non-carbon based biology had taken part in long ago. So they both looked within and researched without, and thus the first Earth human history began to form. Spiritual sciences. They had the first astrophysics, the first astrology. They were the first ones to ask why, too. There you go with your why. They discovered inner ways, inner disciplines, which would and did increase knowledge, understanding, awareness, and consciousness. They came to understand that the whole universe existed first as an idea, and that all created things are first an idea, and they were able to apply this knowledge. With all these understandings, the earliest Atlanteans were in awe of Lemuria. After Lemuria sank, however, Atlantis became very not endeared with some of the later Lemurian colonies of Said, Barata, Cathay / Gobi, and other after cities, states of those time periods, but we'll cover that later. Discoveries. Lemurians were very perceptive. They were not only able to see physical objects with normal vision, but they were able to see what can be called the grid, or aspects of Earth's energetic pathways. As they explored and mapped these ley lines, the chi, systems of the earth, they came to discover that the potential energy in these systems could be tapped and used. This energy, part of the tremendous life flow of the planet itself, could be used to further perception, for healing, and ultimately for transportation. They discovered that certain geometry of both buildings and certain shaped towers in specific locations and built with intent had the result of magnifying this latent universal energy. So the Lemurians built pyramids, temples, geometric shapes, and standing stones, based transformers, and tunnels. All these things were established on ley lines. When Lemuria later sank, much information about ley lines, the grid, and masonry was lost. The Atlanteans, who preferred to work with crystals, metals, and exotic glasses and elements, never had quite the same finesse to build with stones as the Lemurians had. Masonry, the original builders. Okay, let me check to make sure I don't have anybody in the queue. Okay, and then I can take a water break. Okay. The Masons of Lemuria, home of the Earth's first temples and pyramids, masonry, the art of stone work and buildings, originated in Lemuria with the need to build protection from giant animal life, especially dinosaurs. Later, as the need for protecting eased with the rising of numerous buildings, masonry and giant stonework emerged as an outlet for creativity as well as spiritual expressions later. After creating forms with advanced mathematics and geometry, the discovery of energetic focusing in and around the pyramids of certain angles took place. Masonry, pyramid, and temple buildings then developed for the Lemurians into a spiritual science where building in a harmony with the earth and underlying universal energetic enhanced human health, nurtured the intellect through harmonics, and provided for lush gardens in and around the temple. Meditation and prayer practices became enhanced in these structures. Okay, I just think that they knew that off the bat. If they were in tune, that's not something that they had to learn. So that's just my 2 cents. All right, more ley lines and standing stones. As the Lemurians expanded their population and civilization upon the megacontinent, a need arose for transportation. Ley lines of the earth, somewhat equivalent to energetic meridians upon and within the human body, eventually mapped throughout Lemuria. Standing stones and dolmens built to exact height and configuration were placed in intervals upon these lines. Okay, so I'm just put my little 2 cents on that. Now, hopefully, anybody that knows anything about ley lines, you will start to enter and understand why I'll just use the corporations of United States Corp and the Vatican. Do a little research on where those buildings physically sit. They sit on ley lines, okay? And that's not by accident, okay? All right. The first miners, the first alchemists, fusion, and other ways of changing the elements. The Lemurians wanted to adorn their temples, so from the gods they learned first about mining, then chemistry, then deeper secrets of nature. When larger minds became destructive to the earth, they perceived ways of turning one element into another. This art of alchemy, and very common elements of earth of this period. such as carbon, helium, oxygen, argon, sulfur, hydrogen, and chlorine, were changed into more useful elements, especially the metals such as gold, silver, copper, and mercury. The mines were then, for most part, dormant, no longer needed, and the earth reclaimed these mines. Atlanteans would later use these particular Lemurian sciences and use them in other ways. Okay, so I'm going to stop just to put a little 2 cents on that. Take a sip of water. If you have ever read the book, and I highly recommend it, although I haven't gotten through the whole thing, I do need to buckle down and read it, by William Cooper, Beheld a Pale Horse. He says in that book that back in the 70s, the U.S. court had the technology to turn metal into gold. So I'm saying all that to say these supposedly shortages that we're having with the whole wealth in itself, it's bullshit. Because everything can be regenerated on this planet, even down to the precious metals, where you can use science to turn them into other things, okay? So this is just showing you where they got that technology from. All right, okay, and they ass is still sitting up here lying about the resources. But according to William Cooper, the U.S. Corp has had the technology to turn metal into gold since the 70s. Okay. Who were the first? It's alchemy. Exactly. It's alchemy. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So who were and that's what alchemy means. Absolutely, Brother Sean. Who were the first Lemurians? The first Lemurians, the first intelligence capable of creating civilizations, are not said to have been primate human. Now that's important. Primate human, but one of the other evolved constructs, animal and or other life, nature, particularly evolved of and by spirit and nature and agents of these. So in other words, he could have worded that better, he or she, that the primate human was not the constructs of the physical. It evolved or was created from higher spiritual beings, so on the spirit and nature side. Okay, and then it said, and agents of these, so meaning what they're saying is that the pure consciousness, higher beings created the physical, and then their derivatives, they were taught the knowledge of the high sciences as well. So that's what I'm getting from these agents of these. But it was definitely not, quote, quote, primate. All right. The first Hue, man/woman, Lemurians were said to be particularly crafted, whereas benevolent ETs and other divine orders use other templates for the other 4 races of giant humans in this round of creation. The Lemurians were particularly associated from the evolved version of the primate known then as the giant Lemur. For a time, Lemuria was known as the land of the giants. Lemuria, land of the giant, home of the house of El. As all the early humanoid life on Earth, the Lemurians were giants, mostly of brown skin at first. Now, I'm not motherfucking making this up, y'all. I'm just reading what dude or sis, whoever wrote this, put. They had some knowledge of what had went before. Earth's early history and that of the solar system itself, and the cataclysmic rearrangement of some of the planets and outright destruction of others. As their first civilization arose, so did nobility, and they came to be known and highly respected, and the grandfathers and grandmothers of Earth's civilization. In time, the world then knew and respected what came to be called the House of El. The other giants of Lemuria, the dinosaurs, everything was large in Lemuria. Lemuria had strongest nature, the most nourishing life, giving land of all original continents. The trees and the plants were mostly giant, but different plants than what Earth has now. Most of the animals, even insects, were larger than present. Okay, sorry, y'all. I'm still getting a vision of Avatar up in my head. Okay. The early ETs and interstellar trade. Among other visitors, the original native Martian Greys, at this time a thriving civilization after a long recovery from the last large asteroid bombardment, noticed that there was light power and movement on Earth, most notably on the largest continent of this time period. ET visitors then came to Earth, and the Martian Greys were among those who did interplanetary trade and other interaction with intelligence. Then on Earth, much of a beneficial nature was exchanged. Okay, so 77,000 and some change BC, the Lemurian decline, the Great Decline. Stagnation of mental and spiritual development plus rampaging giant animals and dinosaurs. Lemuria, which had kept its knowledge and understanding intact during the previous low aspects of the Yuga cycles, began to have problems remembering what was. The Lemurians of this period, for the first time in a long time, lost the ways of evolution/involution. They still knew what they were supposed to do, what practices to continue, yet there was a feeling of stuck. There was a great argument among the people about what to do with the newly resurgent, numerous, and dangerous animal life. There were many other questions the Lemurians no longer felt they had to answer for. Lemuria, in a way, went into a funk and stopped developing hard technology and began to disregard spiritual technologies they no longer felt enthusiastic to practice. Sounding familiar. Anyway, they also knew and remembered that if they wanted more ideas or technology, all they had to do was to tap in cosmic database, which we call Akashic records. Yet they did not do so. Later on, when nature and even more large animals, including the dinosaurs, increased their rampages and damages, the Lemurians still did not want to face the problem, and thus there was more suffering. In an interesting note, in the far southeast of Lemuria, in what is now Australia, a small mountain range kept most of the rampant nature, jungle, and dangerous large animals out. Yet the Lemurians did not move into this uninhabited, safer part of their own homeland. They did not want to move from their sacred sites, temples, and jungles, no matter how many animals were tearing into people. So this land in Australia stayed barren of humans until a later migration of people from part of Africa came to that area. 2/3 of the Lemurians, around 6.5 billion people, chose to not leave their land, even with warning signs, and so perish. But this is getting ahead of the story. Okay, so I'll pause in case Brother Sean, you want to put something on it, get a drink of water, and check the queue.
Yeah. just thinking about the whole giant thing.
Yeah, I wanted your take on that.
I mean, so obviously the trees were bigger, even though it couldn't have been the silicone-based trees because they were building pyramids. In order to have the area to build those pyramids, trees had to be removed.
That's true. That's a good point.
And then tapping off into the ley lines, which is mother's blood and veins is blood.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be during the fall because that is very disrespectful to mother. You're supposed to naturally be able to tap in without tearing off into her flesh.
So you actually answered my question that I was going to have for you. Do you think that Lemuria happened after the fall? So meaning the silicon trees in them was first.
Yeah.
And then that got destroyed. So the Avatar, that's what we're trying to describe, family. So the Avatar civilization got destroyed first, and that's when the fall started happening. So Lemuria, although it was, it's being pegged as one of the first civilizations, it was actually probably, shit, this making sense. I think we didn't set up and solved it in our mind any damn way. It's probably in our mind the first civilization of the fall, because it talked about them being in a low vibrational state, which is that yuga that they described, and why they had to introduce language.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to build the geometric shapes, like you said, on top of mama's blood veins and stuff. Whereas if they were still in the high vibrational realm, they wouldn't have had to do that because it would have been emitting automatically across because of those silicon trees with the crystals, which were growing directly from mama's veins and mama's blood.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm agreeing with you because I had always thought that the fall happened when those silicon trees and that whole plant life, all of that was destroyed. I felt that that was the first fall. I really did. So very interesting.
You look at these fossilized giants.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering if those are the Lemurians and that's part of their karma.
I think so. Absolutely. I agree with you. Yep. Those are the giants that they're digging up. And, those ancient ass stairs, that, how they've uncovered those stairs that truly they had to have built those stairs. Giants had built those stairs and some of those structures and stuff. Yeah, that could very well be the Lemurians and the fall of that civilization. Okay, but that was the second fall. That wasn't the first fall. So I agree with you. All right, thank you for that. I think we didn't solve that. So let me see, where the hell was I at? Isolationist tendencies, then events leading to a Atlantean and Lemurian partnership. So this was around 65,000 BC. Due in part, suck it now. Due in part to genetic and species tampering, which included the creation of the Lemurians of those time periods by the ETs and later from Earth's humans, both Lemurians. Okay, let me stop right there. So, Brother Sean, who do you think the ETs are?
Extraterrestrials. Terra is Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if anybody is extraterrestrial, it's us because we're able to go beyond.
That's what I think. I think it's two things. And it could be us coming from those other outer lands beyond, or transporting in to the realm to bring certain knowledge. Or if you want to say teleporting, is what I'm trying to say. That'll describe it better. Or teleporting into the particular land. So totally agree with you. It's one or the two. Okay. Okay. Due in part to the genetic and species tampering, which included the creation of the chimeras of those time periods by the ETs and later from Earth's humans. Both Lemuria and Atlantis had isolationist tendencies. Other human groups and even civilizations were at best observed discreetly, but no contact was made, nor help offered in any problems. The two most advanced civilizations of the day, Atlantis and Lemuria, kept to themselves. Prior to 65,000 BC, both the Atlanteans and the Lemurians, with the leave nature and other humans alone mindset of the time, let nature get out of control. I don't know about this, but I'm going to see where blood is coming from. Okay, with weather control of the vapor barrier in the atmosphere and globe spinning comfortable temperatures, plus the very fertile soil from the volcanoes, plants and animals on all the then continents grew easily very large. Mammoths and giant mastodons, giant cats, and very hungry dinosaurs, as well as other then common large land and sea creatures, either ate, trampled, or otherwise destroyed human farms, gardens, and took many lives. Structures not made from stone or metal were crushed by the bigger creatures. Lemuria had many large dinos who liked to munch on humans. The Lemurians, who cared less for technology than the Atlanteans at this time, had to take to living in fortified caves, or the earlier built massive stone pyramids and temples to avoid problems with the animals. Okay, which was interesting, Brother Sean. I'm tending to agree with you because since they were in this low yuga or low vibrational period, it's like they stopped tapping into the universe to, you know what I'm saying? Because none of that should have even been happening.
Exactly, because I mean, if it's during the period where the animals are attacking people, that means we lost our relationship with them and we're no longer communicating with them.
Exactly. So during this low vibrational state period, or the yuga as they call it, folks was just straight up sleep. And they had lost a connection. Because that shit shouldn't have been happening. All them goddamn plants around there, the animals had no business munching on folks.
Right.
So, very, very interesting. Okay. Let me check the queue right quick. Okay, we're good on the queue. Okay, so Atlantis, with its research and renewed interest in technology, was not going to let their cities and continent be trampled. Atlanteans, which by this time had redeveloped flying craft and was just finishing construction of its ultimate power source networking device, the Great Crystal. Soon overflew Lemuria. The Lemurians knew who it was looking at them from the air, and things looking very desperate, sent a sailing ship to Atlantis to ask the government for help. The Atlanteans, feeling awe and respect towards the elder big brother / sister civilization, were more than glad to help. Not much happened at first, however, and very large animals and dinosaurs continued to roam and trample and eat unchecked. Later, Atlantis started focusing considerable resources towards helping Lemuria. Okay, so let me get to the second part. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, let me scroll down. Okay, and then they have great redrawings of each particular area with the territory, and they have renditions of maps of Atlantis, where it was located, where Lemuria was located. And again, this is off atlantishistory.info. It was a lot more information beforehand that you can go back and read as well. Okay, so Atlantis, the original size continent. After the partitioning of the waters above and below, Atlantis emerged as Earth's 7 original continental size land masses. The size of this continent / land was enlarged once, then later sinking twice in the size through cataclysmic wars / technology until what remained were 7 islands. Starting aggression in 10,000 BC, 4th period Atlantis started wars and cataclysmic, which caused the remaining 7 Atlantean islands to shrink or otherwise be vaporized from existence. Volcanoes and newer volcano islands and islets are all that remain today out of 6 out of 7 of those islands. These islets are known as Bermuda, Bimini, the Bahamas, the Azores, the Madres, and the Canaries, plus a few others, which now constitutes very small portions of what Atlantis washed free of Atlantean structures, artifacts, and even the red topsoil itself. A very large Atlantean continent once existed. Atlantis was at first larger than North and South America combined and existed where most of the Atlantic Ocean is now. Today's Atlantic Ocean is somewhat a mirror reversal of what Atlantean landmass used to look like. The new world of the American continents did not then exist except as part of the original Atlantean 7 seas. Original Atlantis was around 2/3 of the size of the present-day Eurasia continent. Most of the present-day Europe. Okay, so let me backtrack right quick. Let me take a sip, because that's important. We talked about that last week when I told you all to go pull them ancient maps, because a lot of people don't even know that Eurasia was one. Okay, so meaning Europe and Asia was one continent. Okay, so I'm glad they slipped that up in there, because we kind of talked about this last week when we were talking about who was on what original land, and I said, and Brother Sean said, you better take notice of who the Caucasians really were, etc. Okay, so most of the present-day Europe, Russia, and Antarctica were then underwater. Over the pond was originally a phrase of the Atlanteans who were describing how easy it was for them to reach Africa and Hyperborea across 2 of the original 7 seas. The Atlanteans were the first sailors of the earth. Later, during periods, had high technology in flight. They still sailed. Such was their enjoyment on marine travel. Okay, and just so you know, when they talk about that Hyperborea, they're talking about the center of Mama Earth, where the aurora borealis, those energy centers, shoot out. Okay, before the first destruction, 52,000 BC, England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland were all a part of the original Atlantean landmass, connected via an isthmus to mainland Atlantis to the south. Britain and Ireland were connected together in the southern portions. The waters between the two, then a small bay which emptied north into Hyperborean Sea, as the Atlanteans knew it. The isthmus to mainland Atlantis went under the sea with the first cataclysmic, or the first disaster. I'm getting tongue-tied. At the time, most of the British Isles were heavily forested with the temperate rainforest, and not many Atlanteans lived there. It was then a flat land with no hills and no mountains. There simply was not much interest to live in what they call the wild land. Shit, it still ain't really much interest. Sorry, but anyway. I'm just saying, if you ever been to England, whatever. Okay, it was then a flat land with no hills and no mountains. I'm just saying, there simply was not much interest to live in what they call the wildlands. Atlanteans, caring so little about this area, did not mind when another group of humans migrated from the Caucasus Mountains in what is now Russia to settle in these wild lands. Okay, I'm going to stop. Let me sip something. I'm finna be a little shit starter, but
hey, it is what it is.
So, Brother Sean, based on what you and I know, we looked at them ancient maps. Do you think the Caucasians that was in those particular mountains, do you think they were melanated, or do you think that it was the white skin, or the less melanin to no melanin, what we know as the Caucasians now? Because we do know in those ancient maps that you had melanated people labeled as Caucasians. Mm-hmm. And we do know that melanated people were the first inhabitants of Russia.
First inhabitants of everywhere.
Okay. So I'm just saying, folks. I'm just saying. It really makes you think. All right. So, Atlantean.
That's why I said.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But that's why I said earlier that eventually they'll be gone, because they're not the key players in none of this anyway.
Yes. Yes.
They're a distraction.
Yes. Yes. So we're just saying, family, and if you don't believe us, go pull them ancient maps of Africa. And they're going to name the different, what we're categorizing as races today. Caucasians weren't white. So who was really pulled up out the mountains? All right, so Atlanteans, caring so little about this area, did not mind when another group of humans migrated from the Caucasus Mountains in what is now Russia to settle this wild land. The English Channel did not exist then. Instead, it was part of a larger shallow sea that covered Western Europe. Okay, so the original Russians we know were melanated. We know the original folks in Europe were melanated. And we know if you look at the ancient maps, the original names for the Caucasians were people that looked melanated. And according to this, they migrated to Russia, came up out of them Caucasus Mountains over into Europe. I'm just saying. Okay, so this should be putting things in different perspectives, which later became known as the Moors of Europe. That's the title they chose to give themselves. Okay, not saying that's the case, but it's seeming a hell of a lot suspicious to me. Okay, anyhow, Atlantis' south shore extended from near what is now Africa, heading west and slightly north, almost all the way to what is now Yucatan, Mexico. Atlantis then included parts of Cuba, the Florida Keys, Bimini, and the Bahamas. The Atlantean west coast went further north and east to include Bermuda. At that time, all of the eastern U.S., with the exception of the Appalachia Islands, was underwater. The mountains on Appalachia Islands were much taller than the present-day Appalachian Mountains and rose straight up out of the Western Ocean, as the Atlanteans then called it. In Atlantean myth, told then to the children, these mountains were said to be guards. Before the first cataclysm, the southern and southwestern Atlantean coastal areas were the most highly populated and had the biggest city and highest technologies of all that continent. The beautiful red/crimson sand beaches of these south coast areas were world renowned for their beauty. The main giant crystal power plant, as well as other crystal plants, pyramids, industry, gen ed, biology, science, and healing centers were located east of Bimini. There was a giant zone of large connected cities and industries that stretched from what is now Bimini south and east, paralleling the South Atlantean coast. Other mega metropolitan areas stretched north from Bimini all the way to Bermuda. At the east central Atlantean coast, across and out a bit from present-day Portugal, spiritual temples, hot springs, large gardens, and pyramids stood. Some still stand, yet 500 feet below the present ocean level upon the sunken continent. From western Atlantis, another sea covered what is now the North American continent, including Mexico. From Bermuda, the Atlanteans' north coast meandered north and east to eventually come back up to the British Isle areas. Northeast of Bermuda, all the way through today's British Isles, was the least populated area on the original Atlantean continent. Okay, and so they're showing a picture. Oh, excuse me, y'all. They're showing a picture, Atlantean giant crystal forest on the original continent Atlantis, and they're saying a human 28 feet tall is seen in the in the picture, they're saying lower left, the solar fire effect is seen immediately above the crystal forest as a distant shimmer effect. All right, so Crescent Africa. Large parts of West African land were then underwater, yet at the time, Africa extended further to the north and much further east. What is now the Eastern Sahara Desert was then Shara, a forest and jungle very lush with a large lake at its center. The land was not as conducive to agricultural as the Mediterranean lands to the north, but supported abundant number of large animals and dinosaurs. Shara Lake, then a lake of renown and commerce, was then fed by the Nile River. This lake emptied west into the Atlantic Eastern Sea, which then covered large parts of North and West Africa. The lake supported 3 large cities, several smaller towns, and many villages. Atlanteans, colonists, and later Lemurians and Hyperborean colonists all existed harmoniously together here for quite some time. And then it's going just a small distance toward Central Africa coast and also directly across from the large eastern coast of Atlantis. Atlanteans began to mine what we now call uranium and other radioactive elements. See there, this when the fuckery come into play, they mined it from what is now Gabon. The Gabon of 52,200 BC was an island not connected to the Africa of that time. Gabon is the only presently known place on Earth where a natural process, atomic fission reaction, has taken place. When the Atlanteans first mined it, they're saying 61,000 BC, the area was still active, and then naive Atlantean miners later suffered radiation poisoning. Later period Atlanteans also mined there. The Atlanteans of all these periods of time caused wars and skirmishes to mine these radioactive minerals. The land did not ever belong to Atlantis. Okay, so there we go with the fuckery early on. Well, this is probably the second or third version. Okay, but anyhow, I'll pause in case you have something to put on it, Brother Sean. It'll give me a chance to take some water.
Yeah. So they were all living in harmony together.
Mm-hmm.
Them with the giants. And everybody all kicking it together.
Right.
And I guess this is the time when it's allegedly Pangea, the age of Pan. Because I think all that fuckery too. And then for a place to have sunken, wouldn't it have to be floating?
Yeah.
I mean, it would.
Yep.
I don't think that it was sunken. I think maybe it was flooded.
I think so too. I agree with you. I think that it was flooded. That's a very good point.
Because everything is still connected.
Yes, it is still connected. Yep. It's just flooded. I would agree with you on that. Totally would agree with you. Let me go to 832. 832, your line is open.
Rhonda, my sister from another sister.
Peace and
Sean,
love.
my brother from another mother.
How's it going, brother?
WHY.
I know, I had to call that out.
You know, Sean, you just took the words from my mouth because I was going to ask, was the land sunken? or the water rose over. So if the water rose over, is it antediluvian? Is it the first flood story? Because you can go anywhere in so-called ancient tomes of all the so-called recorded history of all the so-called cultures of all the so-called planets. They all have a flood story, don't they?
Yep. Yes, they do.
And I think the next, I'm a Floridian, so I was cringing a bit when you kept saying, Bimini is the island, by the way. And Bimini, Bermuda, what is all this
Bimini,
as far as the
okay,
triangle
Bimini,
is concerned?
Huh? Thank you for that, Bimini. Yeah, yes.
Where I don't remember hearing you mention anything in the aspect of the Bermuda Triangle. Is that coming up in the discussion?
It will. I'm not sure if they're going to bring it up here because I have much more material to go over. Because we haven't gotten to the part of how what they're calling sunken, but I like you and Brother Sean's analogy better. Flooded. We haven't gotten to that part yet, so I'm assuming they'll go into the Bermuda Triangle. If not, I have other material that's going to go into it.
Now, do you want to be Siskel or do you want to be Ebert in bringing up the movie review?
No, you go head on. You it doesn't matter. I'll let you pick the role.
Aquaman. Aquaman. I can't believe you didn't bring up Aquaman.
Yes. Well, when it hasn't hit theaters yet, has it? When is it supposed to hit?
I believe probably I would say it's projected around the holiday season, maybe.
Okay.
But
so we got to the
holiday. If you remember,
yes.
did you watch the Justice League and how they coalesced the Atlanteans and the Amazonians with Wonder Woman?
I have not
Wonder Woman and Aquaman.
I have to go watch that. I'm not hip on that. I wasn't a big Justice League fan, but shit, now I'm going to have to go back and watch it.
Well, go ahead, Sean. You be Ebert. I'll be Siskel.
Okay.
They had this. Do you remember the villain's name, Sean?
That was
Steppenwolf.
He was the son that was dethroned. They got rid of him.
Yeah, remember those three boxes? I can't remember how they called them or what they called them. They called them a certain machinery that was created, and he worshipped a mother. Do you remember that? You talk about the All Mother or something like that, and this was supposed to be the order of chaos from where his planet came out. But the villain was called Steppenwolf, and I can't remember. You remember the rock group, Rhonda? I think that was out of New York somewhere. It was.
Yeah, Steppenwolf. The rock group Steppenwolf.
Yep, I remember I don't remember what they played and all of that. They were in the 70s, right?
Yeah, but the villain was named Steppenwolf. The Amazons, the Atlanteans, and they called us, what did they call us, Sean? The tribe of men.
Yeah.
Was supposedly the ones that rose up, and this is where and in this movie review, Rhonda, this is where the pantheon of DC Comics comes from. They threw a Green Lantern in there. You remember, Sean, that scene where they all came together and battled this one evil villain, Steppenwolf.
Right.
And then they tore apart these three boxes. I forgot what they called the boxes, but these three boxes could not come into contact with each other because of the radioactivity and the signals, the frequency, right, Sean?
Yeah, I think they were like Tesseract.
But it was because, the Tesseract is from Marvel, though. That's what the Infinity Stones, if you saw the last Avengers and Infinity War, they had those 6 Infinity Stones.
Right, but it was along those lines, though. They just used different wording for it. I just can't remember what they called it.
And these three particular boxes type of thing, I think he called them the mother boxes or something like that, but whatever. They broke them apart, Rhonda, and one was left in the guardianship of the Amazon, One was left in the guardianship of the Atlanteans, and the last one was buried in the ground from the tribe of men, so none of mankind could use it to wield as a power force over other tribes.
Wow. So are they literally calling us the civilization or the folks the Atlanteans?
Oh yeah, in the movie it was. That's what Aquaman is. Aquaman. Now here's the thing. And remember, I'm gonna bow to Siskel after I say this. But Diana, Wonder Woman, is the princess, and Aquaman, I forgot what his name was, but he was the prince. Remember? Remember, he was a orphaned prince, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Sean?
Yeah.
So are they saying Wonder Woman is an Atlantean?
No, she's an Amazonian. She's an Amazon.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, I thought she was an Amazonian. Okay, so Aquaman, they're saying, is an Atlantean.
Right. But again, they're implying that he's an aquatic being, not like Atlantis was a landmass, like you were pointing out tonight.
Right.
And I got a little, throw another movie review in there. We're going to go back to Avatar, Sean. Okay. What happened with the dreadlocks and the fibers of the silicon mother tree?
Well.
Right into each other. That was the connection.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the catchphrase from the sister? Because remember, he fell in love with the princess.
Right.
Of the I forgot the name of the tribe, but her phrase was what? I see you.
Yep.
And then you had the beasts that were the flying beasts. They used the dreadlocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that how they found which one that they could be in tune with?
Exactly.
To be able to fly.
Get on the same vibration. That's right. Yes, that is correct.
And then the horse-type creatures, they used the dreadlocks.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't all these people have antennas or fibers or something of these animal species?
Yes, they did.
Okay, now I'm pointing these examples out. You in your study of this particular reference materials and whatnot, they said a blue being and a green being. Now, which one is melanated, by the way? I believe they both are. But
yeah, they both are.
Blue is usually associated with an ice-type environment. As in, are you familiar with Michael Bradley, Iceman's Inheritance?
I'm not familiar.
Sean, you hip to that book? We talked about the Caucasoids devolving over time. You know, this is where they get this out of Africa theory that you talked about. Dane Calloway has referenced it another way, but that's talking politically from some bigoted individual and white supremacist. But Michael Bradley, one of them, kind of like Tim Reed. If you've ever heard the author Tim Reed, you know, he's an anti-white supremacist, quote-unquote, white man. You know. But the Iceman's Inheritance supposedly talks about the evolution of them in the Step Pyramid, the Caucasus Mountain, and the ice environment. Now, anyone who's watched Game of Thrones, they know about those so-called, what do they call them, White Walkers, Sean, I believe?
Right.
These ice demonic tribe that's on the other side of the wall, similar to Antarctica.
Right.
Who cannot procreate. You know how they get their babies? From other tribes throwing their reject children on the ice. And they are albinos, literal white people. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily the blue race that they're implying in that. But let's go to the other version of the green race. The green race is something that's considered tropical and fertile, isn't it? That's usually around the equator. They like to be throwing this around as Africa being eaten. They never referenced us, North, Central, or South America, ironically. But, you know, I wanted to wrap that up with one last thing you said about the Black Goo, another movie review for Cisco to consider. It's coming out either the end of this month, between now and October. It's called Venom. And if you're
Yeah,
familiar
I
with
saw the
the
preview.
Spider-Man tone, this goo is an extraterrestrial entity that all of a sudden falls down on Earth through a meteor strike. And it is totally malevolent, Rhonda. I mean, supposedly the consummate of evil. You know where it goes. People have dark, black, evil connotations in the definition of it, right? So this venom, they call it a symbiote, is an extraterrestrial mind or entity that consumes human hosts and turn them malevolent, wicked, and evil.
Yeah. When I saw that, I immediately thought black goo.
That comes from the Spider-Man, and anyone who knows the spider mythology of so-called African folklore is Anansi. You know, because remember I told you a piece about a minute ago back about American Gods. That's another intriguing series.
Yes,
talks
it is.
about
I'm waiting for season 2.
How do these God concepts get transported to America? And I yield, my sister.
Okay. Thank you, brother. Thank you. You brought beautiful insight as usual. Thank you so much. I was waiting for you to come on in. So, just to my take on the whole blue and green people, because they were both brown. In any of my research, and we're gonna have to split this up into 2 parts, but that's okay. All of them say civilizations derived from black and brown. It all says that, and pretty much the way they describe tonight, or how we're describing tonight, or how the regions were broke up, was pretty much the same, with the exception of this one gives more detail, and now I understand why, of that whole Europe space. So meaning the Russia, the Africa, etc. Nobody else got that deep about it. So now what I think, because as I was reading through that material, and some folks, you may have to go back and re-listen to that part, because remember they said there was several different type of beings into play. Okay, and then they said that there was experimentation going on. Okay, so I'm not sure who now are being labeled as the Caucasian people, the white people, how they came into play. Was it a mutation on genes? Modern science is starting to admit now that it is a mutation on genes, stemming from the black and brown gene. Some say it was a creation. If you look at that ancient African map that I keep harping on, you're going to see on that map that the Caucasians were brown. They weren't even brown. They were black. Plain as day. Now, they were white people on the map, but they were like underground. But in addition to that, you had other species. So you can tell that there was genetic manipulation, because you had like part animal folks with different human body parts and animal mixed together. In the sea, because it even shows you out in the sea, they even had the damn mammal life, the fish life. The fish were even different species. Okay, so there was, even according to this material I'm reading tonight, genetic manipulation going on. But it all stemmed from the black and brown were the first out the gate. They were the first. So I just want to throw that out there. Now, that's just my take on who the Caucasians originally were. I'm just going off of what that map showed. And this is kind of backing up what that map said, because those original Russians, we know, were melanated people. We know the original inhabitants of what we're now calling Europe, England, and that, the land that nobody fucking wanted to be bothered with, were also melanated people. Okay? So I believe that the melanated folks, not I believe, shit is documented fact, that our melanated people took the lesser melanated having beings, which we are now calling the Caucasian beings, and brought them over to Europe for whatever, to be slaves, and then eventually into the Americas to be slaves. Okay, now whether or not they were in the Icelands and all that, that could very well be true. But as far as the first cycle of things, no, they weren't in that. That was all black and brown. So that green and blue, I'm looking at it as it could be a vibratorial rate thing with the blue and the green particular people and continents. But everything stemmed from the black and the brown. And I'm going to continue to get a little, I think we only got 15 more minutes. We'll have to continue on. You're going to see where the wars came into play. But even where we are now on this, there was already other particular species that was in the mix. So folks had already started with the fuckery with the with the different species. Okay. I know Brother Shawnee has something else to say. Go ahead.
The way I see it, anytime there's a particular group that spoke about above everybody else, they were the ones that were in power.
Exactly.
So they were the ones that were dictating what was going on.
Exactly.
And with the creation of language and all of these things that they're credited with, that was ways of trapping and binding the soul. Because the body is just a vessel in which to experience everything with.
Exactly.
Nothing is as it appears when we're in our pure form.
Yes.
So all of this
totally agree.
is a trap. Everything associated with it. And those who we study about and look through history about who created language and this, that, and the other, and we're so proud of that. We're proud of creating something that trapped us because we were those people.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, we were. Absolutely. Absolutely. We were the Lemurians and the Atlanteans. 1,000% agree with you.
And we still at war with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so I know we're probably only going to have 15 minutes. I'm still going to continue on. Hopefully, folks are getting a lot out of this. I'm trying to give as much background as I can. We're going to have to do a part 2 to get into, why the war happened and all of that. Okay, so the Mediterranean Sea did not used to exist, and what was then just a lake and a river, a part of a greater continent of Crescent Africa, after the northern lands and sea of Crescent Africa shifted during the Wars of the Gods. Okay, notice they said Wars of the Gods, 375,000 BC. Okay, Atlantis, for the first time, began looking at this area as a potential breadbasket, a food growing area which would supplement mainland Atlantean agriculture. As a later agricultural colony that had great success growing food and other crops, this Atlantean colony area, like Lake Atlantis itself, would slide below sea level. The Pillars of Hercules, first built during these wars of the gods and titans, were the exit point for the then Mediterranean River. World ocean levels were at least 300 feet lower than at present. So they've just answered the question and validated both you and Brother 832. It was flooded. Okay, so if it was, it was flooded. So there you all go. You all were right on the money. Gobi, the Cathayan continent, Cathay, was in this time period was a large singular continent in and of itself, and was the closest large landmass to Lemuria, whereas the earliest Atlantean and Lemuria had homegrown advanced human, and then in parentheses after humans they have demigods and titans. Earliest Cathay had the first real visitors and interactions with ET guests and consultants. So that's interesting. Once again, there go that ET, and I'm agreeing with you, Sean, who the ETs are, those higher beings. And, we both said that they were coming in giving knowledge, so they even said they were guests and consultants. The later Atlantean, which would make sense, because even for the Atlanteans to have this technology, if the planet was in a lower cycle or the Yuga, they had to be getting the technology from somewhere. Okay, so the later Atlanteans, with both technology and enthusiasm, would attract much more ET interaction than Gobi would have. However, very early, Gobi welcomed a species of ET to co-colonize their continent. There go the fuckery. These near-human ETs would eventually interbreed along with genetic engineering enough with local humans that two different humanoid species emerged enough to become fully Earth humans. In medicine, without machines, food production, biology, and related sciences, Gobians of all eras were never surpassed. This is an example of each continent, each of the 5 original peoples, as having certain specifications which ideally were to be shared freely with the world. Later, Atlanteans were the first and became the worst in both later Atlanteans were the first and became the worst in both withholding needed understanding and then in harboring dangerous and misunderstood secrets. Okay, sounds familiar today, just saying. Hyperborea. Hyperborea was the last of the 5 original continents to get a human population. It was the last in these earliest times to develop knowledge, technology, and understanding. Hyperborea, up until 5210 BC, for the most part, contained the south pole of the Earth. Okay, so that's by the Arctic, y'all. Specifically centered on what is now the Caucasus Mountains. During this time period before God/Titans War or any of the succeeding 3 global cataclysms, Okay, so according to this, there were 3 falls or 3 wars before Atlantis and Lemuria. Okay, Hyperborea then had 2 unique features. The South Pole proper and the Caucasus then was the only raised elevation on Earth at an elevation of 3,000 meters. The North Pole was then located in the South Sea of Lemuria in what is now known as the South Pacific Ocean. Early Earth, before global calamities, did not have a wobble and therefore did not have seasons. The other strange aspect of early Hyperborea was that without the seasonal wobble at the South Pole was only perpetual twilight. No seasons, no sun, and no light. The weather then was part of the globe encircling atmospheric manifold, and the time mists are what watered most of the giant plants, animals, and humans of Earth. Hyperborea included within not only the Caucasus, but what is now known as the Carpathian Mountains, then a great green forested flatland. Since no rising nor setting sun nor night there was, so the earliest Hyperboreans developed a particularly strong mental constitution to deal with the lack of these things in their lives. In this perpetual twilight of the South Pole, there was perpetual snow located in the caves upon the high domain. The early Hyperboreans here experienced boredom at times and so looked to the skies beyond the twilight of the atmosphere manifold here and always saw bright stars burning through the twilight mist. They were the first to look to the stars, the first to develop instruments to see more stars past the perpetual twilight mist upon the South Pole, the first to develop astronomy, which they later shared with the world. The coming high technology Atlanteans would later supersede the earlier Hyperborean astronomy developments. But by those times, Atlantis and Hyperborea were allies. So the Atlantean sciences were somewhat shared back and forth with the Hyperboreans. Okay, so they're once again just introducing another civilization. So far we have Lemuria, Atlantis, and the Hyperboreans. And the Hyperboreans represent that Arctic area. Okay, a brief synopsis. I'm sorry, go ahead on, brother.
They say there was no sun.
Yep.
And the globe just spinning around in the dark, and that's how the plants and everything got watered.
Yeah, now I don't believe. Well, you know me with the spinning globe stuff. I don't agree with that.
I'm just saying though, the globe was spinning around in the dark because of the
but
mist
we had
or
giant
whatever.
plants.
That's how the plants got watered. So I mean, where was the oceans and all that?
Right.
The plants had to be watered by the mist of the globe spinning around in the dark.
Yeah, they kind of fell off on that. So they need to go back and reevaluate that whole spinning globe model. Yeah, they kind of raggedy as hell on that. Even when they were explaining the South Pole, and then they said, yeah, the North Pole. Yeah, but the North Pole is by, I think they said South America or something like that. so yeah, they kind of
South Pole was
that
by
area.
the Caucasus Mountains.
Yeah. So they kind of raggedy in that little area with their whole globe model. it falls apart. Their locations fall apart, and as well as the climate falls apart because I think what they should have, the way they should have been describing it, is that the sun was not setting in the South Pole. And you know what I'm saying? The sun wasn't setting in the South Pole. And the different colors that they were describing, like I think they said it was orange on the Lemuria side. I can't remember if it was orange on the Atlantean side and yellow on the Lemuria side. Don't quote me. It could have been switched. But anyhow,
it was
that's
orange
coming.
on the Lemurian side.
Okay, it was orange on the Lemuria side. Okay, that was coming from the Aurora Borealis. Okay, where the Hyperboreans, that's their territory. Okay, so they're seeing all of these energy fields, what we call today the Northern Lights, and that's why they were such good astronomy folks, because they're right there at the what do you call a northern star? What's the official name for it? I know y'all know what I'm talking about. Polaris. That's what it's called. Polaris. Okay, so they're right at that magnetic center. So they're able to map the skies as they see so it would make sense where they became the master of astronomy. So yeah, their whole description kind of fell apart when they tried to stick to that globe model. So you're absolutely right. I'm like, bruh or sis, need to do a little bit more research. Y'all kind of off on that. Okay. All right, so, and I'm not sure if we're going to get cut off in 3 minutes, family. If so, we're going to pick back up next week to finish this up. But I'm just going to read on out because it's been sketchy. Sometimes we get cut off at 10. Sometimes we get cut off at 10:30. Okay, a brief synopsis of events: the second Earth early historical period, Atlantis. The first golden era of Atlantean civilization of Atlantis was heralded by the first king, Poseidon. Okay, so brother 832, this where you and brother Sean need to start mapping this to Marvel and what's the face in them. Marvel and DC and them, but I think Marvel do more on the Atlantean side. Okay, so all of these particular characters, I'm sure, are going to map back to a lot of that stuff. Okay, so the first king, Poseidon, and the mighty hero of Atlantis, the giant Atlas. Long after the 5 Adam and Eves and their family had come and gone from Earth around 375,000 BC, Atlantis needed a hero. Giant animals, including dinosaurs, ran free and rampant. The weather and nature seemed out of control. Almost always fog, mist, brief but potential deadly torrential rain, showers or smog from the volcanoes, both on Atlantis and Lemuria. There was no government and not much civilization, and an unfriendly population of non-human type of ETs ruled what little civilization did exist. Loss of facts and later myth building would translate these ETs and their constructs, technology, and control into words such as demon. The Lemurians the Lemurians long had a system of civilization by this time, but they, along with the Lemurian associated small civilizations on Gobi in India, were isolateness. And so thus Atlantis was on its own, trying to deal with the above problems. Human giants existed across the planet at this time and were fairly common. Little people of various types were also still visible. Okay, so that's very interesting. So we got a lot of damn species running around at this point. They talking about giants, other ETs, and now they're saying little people of various types. Okay. So a great king called Poseidon rose to leadership, and along with his giant and heroic friend, the mighty Atlas, united a troubled land. Not much is known, recalled / recovered yet about the background of Poseidon and Atlas, but they did work together to successfully pull Atlantis out of the life-threatening problems, unite the continent under peaceful rule, and provide the first of the fabled Atlantean technology. Okay, so y'all should be able to know this out of the different Marvel stuff that's come out with the Atlantean stuff. I'm sorry, go ahead, brother. Poseidon, my bad.
Yeah. And
okay,
Atlas,
so
that's where they get the whole Atlas map from.
I didn't realize that until I was reading it. I'm like, oh shit, that's where they got that from. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. So Poseidon was called a demigod, an enlightening being or more. He could also be called a sage and perhaps a genius, for it was he who first put together the vapor barrier. I can't make this shit up. For weather control, built the first Atlantean pyramid and grid / ley lines, energy / transport systems. These perhaps with Lemurian help in exchange for giving Lemurians access to the global vapor barrier / weather control. Okay, so in case y'all want to think this weather control shit is something new, it ain't. And promoted advanced health and immortal lifestyle techniques and understanding. And of course, then there was the development of marine technology and sailing and the creation of the first fleet of Atlantis. Thus, the legendary association of Atlantis and sailing was born. Atlantis leading an army put together by. Okay, but before I get into this, so as you can see, there's turmoil. The animals running around, so they claim, fucking with folks, eating them and all of that. You got all of these other species on the plane as well. And now, instead of tapping into the universe to put this stuff in balance, because if stuff was in balance, it never would have been out of control in the first damn place.
Right.
So then they started building technology to combat that, okay? And it's all because they were not in tune with the planet. But again, we were in a low vibrational phase. Okay, so hopefully this puts perspective to folks when they think that where we are going is back to the Atlantis and Lemurian ages. Because I think, Brother Sean, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What if the blue people are water people? Water benders, as in elementals, i.e.
That's
more
a very good point.
green people are the land people,
the
tree
land people. Now that makes sense. Shit, that makes sense. That very well could be it. Because it's just different levels of density. That's all water is. That makes sense.
At one time we were elementals. We were able to control the elements without the use of technology.
Yep. Very good point. Now that's something to ponder. Have to think on that. Okay. All right. Atlantis leading an army put together by. Okay, since way before Adam and Eve had appeared on the planet, the sun, by our view today, in Atlantean time, rose to the east over Lemuria. And it's set in what is now far north Africa, and then they put pre-flood. So they really validating everything that you have been saying, Sean. It appears different people wrote this because this person put it back into perspective. So in other words, the poles were reversed. So that's interesting. All right, so the sun then rising in the east over Lemuria, a reverse planetary rotation, and again, it's not a planetary rotation, it's the sky that's rotating, was one of the reasons why the early Atlanteans had almost mythological reverence and respect for the mother country of Lemuria. In Atlantean mythology, the planetary bombardments by gigantic asteroids much earlier in Earth's history, way before Adam and Eve, the moon capture and the sun rising east over Lemuria were all related. The planet acquired its first, they're saying rotation, poles, okay, because that's what rotates the poles, that Polaris star. That's the center that rotates the sky, okay? So the planet acquired its first rotation / pole / equator during the moon capture. These were all stable into the first cataclysm of Atlantis. What you say dude's name is? Is it Poseidon?
Poseidon.
Okay, Poseidon. Poseidon
Remember
is known.
He was with on that with Zeus and all them. Poseidon
Okay, I'm trying to think. What he wasn't because when I think about Zeus and them, I think about the first Clash of the Titans with the cheesy animation, but that's all we knew back up in the 80s. I can't think of what his role was though. He wasn't
Poseidon,
Zeus' son.
He was king of the oceans.
Okay, now I remember dude. Okay, okay, I'm with you now. Okay, now I know who he is. Okay. Okay, Poseidon is known for sailing his fleet, which would make sense why he got a fleet, upon the seven seas of Atlantis, and what at the time were the seven seas, and why were they called the seven seas instead of the oceans as we know them today. At that time, there didn't exist on Earth any unbroken bodies of water larger than what is now the Indian Ocean. Second in size was the Atlantic of that time, which extended south from Atlantis South Shore, which was then on the equator in the middle of today's Atlantic Ocean, all the way to Antarctica, and included large parts of today's South America and West Africa. Third in size then was the Arctic Ocean, which then covered large parts of Russia and Canada. Sailing up and down Atlantis coast, where most of its cities and civilizations were then, especially on the far southern coast, was one of the earliest and easiest ways to travel. Poseidon, with his love of sailing, soon traveled and mapped adjacent lands and waters, and thus the Atlanteans' famed seven seas were mapped. The seven seas sailed by the early Atlanteans were the Western Sea, which started west of the island chains of what would become the Appalachian Mountains, that covered most of the United States, southern Canada, and Central America. Florida, there you go, brother. Florida didn't exist at all at this time, but the Four Corners and what eventually became the Grand Canyon area of the U.S. was above water, with an island chain extending from there into Mexico. The Sea of Baja covered most of Brazil and large parts of eastern South America, which technically was a part of the then Atlantic Ocean. But the Atlanteans labeled it as its own sea, and in a large part because the land in the area was used as a vacation area. There go the fuckery once again, folks putting claim on shit. The Eastern Sea, covering most of what is now most of Northwest Africa. The fourth one, the Sea of Rocks, a smaller sea that then existed directly east of the capital and linked to the above Eastern Sea. It also covered parts of Europe. 5, the Northern Sea extended up from the wild coast of the north over parts of Greenland and Iceland that were then underwater. This sea connected with the only other ocean beside the Indian Ocean of the time, the Sibir Ocean, which covered the North Pole area, large parts of what is now western and central Siberia, as well as far northern Canada. Number 6, the Crescent Sea, a very long, narrow sea between Atlantis' western shore and the island chain that eventually became the Appalachian Mountains. The earliest developments in technology, the development of the grid system. After the very long and prosperous kingship of Poseidon and then Atlas, Atlantis was ruled by 10 kingdoms, the 10 sons and daughters of Poseidon. Atlantis became rich in materials, cities, and civilizations during the time of the above rulership, and trade development with other civilizations via the legendary Atlantean sailing fleet. The great decline begins after a very long time of high civilization called the Golden Time of Atlantis by the historians of this time. A great decline in humanity's mental function was noted by the Atlantean historians and scientists. Those that were born at this time could not keep running the masterful technologies of Poseidon and Atlas, and machines and technology eventually fell into disrepair. Even the knowledge of operating the pyramids for power, transport, and healing was forgotten. Even the healers of time had lost some records of remedies and methods, and so the life and health of the Atlanteans themselves was affected. Eventually, there was a time of great ignorance, and only the holy men and women of their land were considered to have any knowledge. Okay, so let me pause right there. I'm going to take a sip in case you want to put a 2 cent on it, Brother Sean, before I get my 2 cents.
Sound like the secret societies of today.
Exactly.
Sound like the same old.
Same old bullshit. Exactly. Absolutely exactly.
And as usual, our people are trying to associate themselves with colonizers, yet be slaves at the same time.
Right. And justifying the bullshit. And then, claiming motherfucking land and all that crap. And then want to sit up and pretend like they don't enter and understand why the society is declining.
Mm-hmm.
So you absolutely right.
Earlier you were saying something about when the Atlanteans were setting up colonies.
Yes.
And then the ETs came along and colonized them. That sounds like the old dirty backstabbing trick that happened with the Moors.
Exactly. It's the same shit. It is the same shit. And as I was doing the research for this, I said, I'll be goddamn. this just the same remix. And so as this civilization failed, we fell into lower consciousness, even lower consciousness, because as you can see, Atlantis and Lemuria still was not operating out of higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
They had failed from that. So they started depending more on the technology to shape the civilization and building things out of that technology to control the environment. Whereas when, we were in the higher consciousness society, we worked in harmony and did things out of consciousness. We didn't need those technological tools to do those things. Okay, and then I even noticed in one of the parts that I was reading in the Atlantean civilization, it also talked about them doing commerce and trade. What the fuck you trading for? So that shit had started long before what we know of today. What was their need to trade when you already had abundance? So the fuckery had started with these civilizations. Okay, and a lot of folks want to look to Atlantis and Lemuria as these great civilizations that we're going back to. But I think, you said specifically, and you were talking about in the terms of Egypt. Everybody want to talk about Egypt and Kemet as being all that in the bag of chips. And I remember you saying specifically, well, if they was all that, then why did they fall?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very great lesson to us to enter and understand that stuff that we are calling great were really still operating at a low vibrational state because they weren't operating out of consciousness. And where you're not creating out of consciousness in tune with nature, you're operating at a lower frequency. Okay, so
Go
ahead, Brother Sean.
And Thoth, isn't he the Atlantean that went and took it over to Kemet?
Yes, absolutely. Because they say the Atlanteans are the Kemetans, right?
Yep.
That's what they say.
So when they got took there, it was at even a lower level.
It was at a lower vibration. You better doggone believe it. You better doggone believe it. And I'm pretty sure that the last sentence that I read about the holy men and women of the land were considered to have any knowledge. So those were the ones when, we got to the Kemet civilization, they set up those secret societies because they held the ancient technology knowledge. But even with that, they still were not operating at the high vibrational state that they have the ability to do. Okay, so this is hopefully giving to the family on how, as the people's consciousness changed, how the vibration was lower. And the vibration itself had a lot to do with it because they do say that, we were in the lower Yuga, YUGA time frame, and that's why language was created. But even with that said, just because we are in a lower state, and that's even today, just because we are in a lower vibrational state, does not mean you don't have the ability to operate at a higher vibrational state, to tap in to nature and the cosmos, because it is embedded in you. You are pure energy. Okay, so gold, a common metal in Atlantis and Lemuria. Just like gold volcanoes of Krypton made the metal a commonplace one upon that planet, three different sources of elements made gold: precious and rare earth, metals commonplace in the pre-flood earth. The three sources are large geothermal upwellings common to both Atlantis and Lemuria with highly metallic waters. Two, gold and other metallics were commonplace and easily accessible in the crust of the soils of the pre-flood earth, indicating the ease of mining. Three, and finally, the ability to resynthesize any element out of just about any other element made gold, precious metal, and other rare earth metals very common on Earth during those times. Stonework, pyramids, and masonry were high sciences then, carried over or rediscovered from previous higher civilization of the gods of Lemuria and Atlantis. Yet the stonework and masonry were not completed until the insides of these buildings were finished. Gold and other metals were used extensively pre-flood to line the walls of homes and businesses and temples as a type of decoration, somewhat similar to the wallpaper of today. So again, I'm just going to pause. They were in the motherfucking wrong for that, because there was no need to tear up those elements in the earth for you to be decorating your motherfucking house. Misusing resources. Okay, so the gold lining had other uses besides decoration. Post-flood, upon the re-emergence of Atlantean technology, both Atlantean and other civilizations, as well as Atlantean colonies, such as, now there go the colonies again. This shit ain't new. None of this shit is new. Now, the next statement is, as well as Atlantean colonies, such as in South America and Egypt, once again use gold, silver, copper, and other metals to line the interior of home, businesses, and temples. Okay, so there go the fuckery. What was they doing colonizing? Okay, post-flood, many what were easily accessible geothermal mining sites, as well as many land-based surface mining sites, were either covered over with hundreds to thousands of meters of debris or were destroyed, closed outright. Mining in post-flood times became such more work as it is even up to the present day than it had been in pre-flood. Climate conditions post-flood had changed drastically too, with an ice age that had come about as a result of both the Great Flood and the cataclysmic in and of itself war that tried to prevent the Great Flood. The Great Flood was much more destructive than the war that preceded it. One Atlantean post-flood copper mine was in present-day Michigan. Other Atlantean post-flood mines were in Central and South America, parts of Africa, especially radioactive elements and metals there, and parts of Europe and Russia. Gold was commonplace pre-flood, and scientists in Atlantis then were easily able to put together a gold wall and gold enclosures around 3 meters thick, located within an aligned and polished pyramid set up for experiments. In quantum vacuum states with cosmic rays, gamma rays, and other EM field particles. What is left of this building is now beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. We're going to pick back up next week because I know we get ready to get cut off, and we're going to get into the actual war next week and kind of give some of the landscape of how the planet was pre and post flood and what the atmosphere was like, etc. Okay, so before I do that, Brother Sean, you have any last words for the family?
Yeah. Be careful what you ask for. You want to go back to a time where you think that we were at our greatest.
Yes.
But we were at the greatest point of our fall.
Yes.
So if you want to keep reincarnating and going through all this at lower
fuckery
and lower frequencies,
yep,
keep doing what you're doing. That's all. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Very, very well said. Thank you, Brother Sean. Very, very well said, and which was the very reason I wanted to do this show. So we're going to pick up next week, family. We're going to get into the actual war itself and talk about how that ties into today. But hopefully you're seeing how it ties into today. So we're going to rock out with some music. We're only going to have about 3 minutes. So love you very much, and I'll see you next week. Peace and love, family.